Hello and welcome to another edition of Goalmouth Scramble. I'm Tom Mortlock, and joining me in the studio to talk about all the last week's footballing action, firstly, George Hodgson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ollie Portlock, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And Ryan Smart, good afternoon.
Hello.
Good to have you all on. We'll start off then with the Champions League. We're recording this on a Thursday this week, so we can round up all the action that's been going on. George, where do you want to start us? I'll give you the call on which team we start with this week.
We'll start with United because I watched that game. Didn't see anything from Wednesday's night's action. I think the 1-0 suggested it was quite a close game, really, and which it was far from. I think, obviously, Juventus, I don't think they really got out of second gear all game. Second half, United came at them a bit more, but two people like Bonucci and Chiellini, a simple night for them, really. The first half, I thought United started far too timidly. They looked scared, really, of Juventus. Reminded me of a training exercise for a good 30 minutes before I think Mata put a decent tackle in and the crowd started to get a bit up for it. But when you start, you can't afford to start like that, really, against a team like Juventus, letting them settle. They let them get over halfway without even having to work at all. The midfield just controlled it, and United have started the last few games poorly in the first half, and they've come out second half and managed to get results. And this time it was they found their match, really, and Juventus were far too smart for them. I thought Lindelof played really well for United. I thought he had his best game in a United shirt. Pogba was better second half, but they just limited him to crosses, really, and I think that's credit to Juventus, just how well drilled and organised they are. But a couple of poor individual performances from United players. I thought Lukaku was anonymous, and I thought Matic was a passenger, really, for the whole game.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with a lot of what George has said. I mean, during the first half, United were totally pedestrian, really, and Juventus settled on the ball with 70% possession, and they were just peppering the goal with shots. I think United had De Gea to thank a couple of times. Ronaldo free kick and the rebound from Matuidi punched away from De Gea, and a later on in the game, a Ronaldo effort. It was fantastic tip over the bar by De Gea, but it was just disappointing, very much lacklustre from United, and it kind of lessens the threat of Old Trafford a bit as well. I bet Juve went to Old Trafford and they weren't that. Obviously, it's a big occasion and that, but they could go there with confidence, having looked at United in the league and in past Champions League games, like against Valencia at home. And, Mourinho in his post-match interview was talked about Bonucci and Chiellini, and I can't help but think that's a little bit of a hint to to Ed Woodward and the rest of the board. Again, saying, this is the kind of model I want to base my team off, a solid centre-back partnership, which probably would have involved either Bailly and Lindelof and a world-class centre-back. And I think, you have got to applaud Juventus and how organised and creative they were, but when you've got a centre-back pairing like that, you can afford, like Mourinho said, to lose the ball and still have a solid defence behind you that will sweep up and not let them play. And with United managing one shot in the first half, that's terrible at home, and it's terrible for any team at home, never mind United. But they offered little threat. Lukaku looked hapless. It was just a disappointing performance all around, really. And apart from that stylish, like Pogba drag back and shot that hit the post, which was desperately unlucky not to go in, it didn't really threaten, and it doesn't bode well for their Champions League ambitions.
Ryan, Juventus have pretty much got the the group sewn up now with 3 wins from 3. United second currently on 4 points. Valencia with 2 behind them. United still have enough to get through this group, surely, would you say? Just off the back of what Ollie was saying?
Yeah, I think they have. Yeah, I think Mourinho said over the last few weeks that I think United were always looking at second anyway, which perhaps is a sort of indictment as to how far United have fallen over the last few years. But I think he's also admitted that Juventus are a far better side, which we've seen this week. I think they probably should win in Valencia, and that should be enough to see them through. But yeah, I think they should be able to get second in the group, and then hopefully get a relatively easy last 16 tie, and then who knows where that'll take them.
What do we think about Juventus' chances of winning the tournament outright? Because they've been... Mourinho was very quick to suggest that was a very strong possibility and call them one of the favourites. They've come close in previous years, but what do we think? That they might go all the way this time, or are their teams still better in Europe?
Yeah, I think they've been knocking on the door for a few years now, haven't they? And I think the signing of Ronaldo will be the sort of catalyst behind a real push this year. I think they reached the final 3 years ago, was it? And we're pretty unlucky not to win that year. And then obviously they faced Madrid, and again put in a good performance in the final, but just fell short. I would say this year is probably the best chance. They've got the best team they've had in years. They've got Chiellini and Bonucci arguably still in the prime years, still top quality defenders, and obviously a quality manager in Allegri who's come close so many times. He's one of the best managers in the world, and you'd fancy them to be right up there challenging for the title.
Yeah, they've been there or thereabouts the last few years, and I think they'll probably be the same again. It's Real Madrid that have been their undoing, and Ronaldo more to the point in the last few years. So I think that obviously a good bit of business getting him on their side. And when you've got that base as they do, you've always got a chance. I'd maybe fear for them a bit when you come up against a team with a bit more of a attacking threat. I think it could be I really do think it could be a year for an English side to win it. Liverpool or Man City. I don't think Real Madrid are obviously they're still a top side. I don't think they're what they were without Ronaldo. And I think it's easy to praise Juventus and after seeing them against United, but when they weren't really troubled that much, it sort of makes them look possibly a bit better than they are. That said, I think they will be there in the last 4. I think they won't be a easy opponent for anyone.
Yeah, I think there's only really 2 other challengers. An English team, I'd probably say Man City. With that resounding 3-0 victory against Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine, first English side to beat them on home soil. And Barcelona, who to me look very assured, and a great victory against an informed Inter Milan side at the Nou Camp without Lionel Messi. Shows they can do it without the star player. And I don't know, I just think those 2 teams, Liverpool have got a shout as well, but I think it'll come down to Barcelona or Man City in the final, and it'll be an interesting game. It'll be nice to not have Real Madrid there for me, because I think Real Madrid have got away with it the last couple of years with Ronaldo, because defensively they're quite poor. I mean, watching the highlights of them against Pilsen at home, Pilsen had so many opportunities, they got in behind so many times, and Real Madrid really did get lucky to come away with a victory there. And it's a totally below par Real Madrid this season, league and for me Champions League. So I think it's Juventus's or Man City or Barcelona's for the taking, really.
Okay, then let's move on to look at some of the other results in the Champions League. I tell you what, I'll round up the games that took place on Tuesday, and then we'll look at some of the games that took place yesterday or Wednesday in a bit more detail. So, as we've mentioned, of course, 1-0 to Juventus against United. Young Boys and Valencia drew 1-1 in the other game in that group. As Ollie's alluded to there, 2-1 to Real Madrid at home to Victoria Pilsen. The other game in that group was 3-0 to Roma against CSKA in Moscow. As we've heard as well, Man City beat Shakhtar 3-0 away in Ukraine. The other game was a thriller in that group, 3-3 between Hoffenheim and Lyon. That swung backwards and forwards the momentum in that game, with both sides being in the lead at one point. And then in Group E, AEK Athens lost 2-0 at home to Bayern Munich, who regained perhaps some of their form as well. They've similarly to Real Madrid, they've struggled domestically by their own high standards, that is, of course. Ajax beat Benfica 1-0 in the other game in that group. Moving on to Wednesday's results then. Ollie, what stands out for you in particular from Wednesday's set of fixtures?
Well, there's two games for me. The Dortmund 4-0 win over Atletico, but
very surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, but I am going to go with actually PSV's 2-2 draw with Spurs. I thought it was a well and hard-fought draw. It was surprising to see Alderweireld be so sloppy in possession, but credit to Hirving Lozano, who I think will get a move to a top European club in the next year or so. I think tips him to be one of the standouts of the World Cup, and he put in a decent performance for Mexico. But for PSV, as you can see, he's on the world's biggest stage, or one of the world's biggest stages. He stands out. He nipped in front of Alderweireld, and perhaps got a little lucky with it looping over Lloris, but really, whether it was a deflection or not, it was going to get a goal. I had full confidence, and the Eindhoven crowd were absolutely rocking to a bit of Kernkraft 400 in the aftermath. It was fantastic to see. Spurs, they got unlucky. Kane, a couple of decent efforts, hit the crossbar once, but I don't know. I'm not totally convinced by Spurs this season. I think they do. In domestic play and the Champions League, I think they've been below par compared to the standards last season, and especially in the league, they've got away with a couple of dicey results, and where they could have easily gone down to defeat or a draw. But credit to Eindhoven, PSV, who did get the draw in 87th minute, equaliser from Luke De Jong, and. It's one of those where I think Tottenham, if they do get through to the knockouts, which is looking bleak at the minute, they'd have to step up the performances. With Barcelona top on 9 points, Inter Milan second on 6 points, and Spurs and PSV drawing in third and fourth respectively on 1 point. It really does look bleak for Tottenham, and it's just disappointing because we've seen what they can do as a squad, and they've just failed to live up to standards.
And looking at it, even if they did manage to beat Eindhoven, I've done what you said, PSV. I doubt there's many FC Eindhoven fans listening. They're rivals from the second tier, but I'm sure that they'll be gutted to hear that we keep referring to PSV as Eindhoven. Anyway, even if Spurs beat both of those, then they might still have to get something away at the Nou Camp to realistically go through. With them and PSV are on 1 point each at the moment, and Inter are already on 6 and Barcelona on 9. So it's almost looking like it's Europa League already for them, barring a miracle.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle for them, and not many teams go to the Nou Camp and get points there, and especially the job's going to be made so much harder with Lloris being sent off. Michel Vorm, Paolo Gazzaniga coming in. They're not Lloris standard, are they?
And he's got a bit of that in him, unfortunately, hasn't he, Lloris? He seems to, for all his excellent goalkeeping, I feel like he's got that erratic moment in him. Yeah. It's quite often a lot to do with either charging out or receiving the ball and trying to play out from the back and not quite having the ability to do so. Just things like that make you think, oh, hang on, he's not quite as a top class keeper as he is perhaps usually, and perhaps how some people might put him in that bracket. But he occasionally just does something that makes you think, oh, he's not quite there, unfortunately, and it's to Spurs' demise really, and individual mistakes have cost them in a game that, even though they went 1-0 down, they come back to 2-1, and you think, well, all right, well, they've got the 3 points now, but they still found a way to sort of undo themselves a bit, really. Yeah,
and I agree. I think it's probably, you look at the saves he made against West Ham at the weekend and how he kept Tottenham. He won Tottenham the game, really. And then he comes to the Champions League, and you're right, it's just every so often a moment of madness, kind of just it's to his detriment and to Tottenham's detriment, really. But nonetheless, he's still a top class keeper, and Spurs will concede more without him. I firmly believe.
Just to sort of back up what we're saying there, Mauricio Pochettino has himself said that their chances of reaching the knockout stage are quote unquote nearly over. So yeah, I don't think we'll be. I think it's unlikely that we'll be seeing them in the knockout rounds of the Champions League, and we might be seeing them in the Europa League for the rest of the season. Ryan, is there a game that you'd like to focus on from Wednesday's fixtures?
Yeah, I'm going to move on to Liverpool's group actually and talk about the PSG Napoli result 2-2. I think this season PSG are again looking at trying to win the Champions League. It's something they've focused on for years. They've sacked managers because they haven't got far enough, and it looks like they're in a bit of trouble again this year. Obviously, third in the table, 4 points from 3 games. They're going to have to get a result at Napoli's ground in a couple of weeks, and I think with PSG, it's a case of they've focused too much on winning the Champions League, and I think they've got rid of too many good managers. I mean, you look at what Unai Emery's doing at Arsenal right now. Could he have carried on his good work at PSG and maybe got them up to the Champions League? I think if he'd have been given that time and that backing from the PSG board, he could have done. Thomas Tuchel's come in and he's sort of had a pretty solid start. They're scoring plenty in the league. I don't know what that says about the French league, but in the Champions League, they've not really been as effective, and I think that's where you have to judge PSG on, and they're not really living up to those standards again this season.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. They're in a perilous position. They could be playing Europa League football, after Christmas, and it's not good for a team with their ambitions and with the amount of money they spend just on 2 players. Never mind the rest of them. It is mind-boggling. How they can keep chopping and changing managers, a bit like Chelsea, to be fair.
You would have to feel a bit sorry for the rest of the Europa League if they did end up being in it, though.
Yeah,
one of my favourites.
I think for me, this group is probably the group of death, if there is one in this year's Champions League. I think looking at it from the start, I probably would have said PSG and Liverpool to go through, and Napoli would be unfortunate to miss out on going to the Europa League when they could quite easily qualify from another Champions League group if they were in it. But obviously that's not proven to be the case so far. I still would have PSG going through from that group. The way they tore Red Star apart, allegedly, or with or without the help of some off the pitch. I don't want to say the word fixing, but those were the reports around it. That seems to have disappeared though in the most recent weeks. But you just can't. I can't really think of and contemplate the fact that side wouldn't be in the next stages of the Champions League. It would be very odd to see a side full of that much talent in the Europa League. Not that they'd struggle with playing on a Thursday night and then playing in the French League, because they would be able to rest everyone, and any team they put out in the French League seems to be able to win for them at the moment. But I think fans will be not only worried about the fact that they might not be able to get through, but more to the fact that even if they do get through, they've not maybe put their stamp on the competition in this group as much as they would have liked to have done. So I think they might be a bit concerned that they might have a similar story to recent years in the latter stages if they get there and lose to some of maybe the more reputable big names in Europe. Just to go over the other games then on Wednesday to finish our Champions League roundup. Let's start in Group A then. That was Borussia Dortmund's group, as we heard 4-0 against Atletico Madrid, which for a side that prides itself on its defending was a pretty shocking result, really. Borussia Dortmund are obviously on excellent form at the moment, domestically as well. So it's not surprised that they gave them a good game and they won, but the manner of it is quite surprising. In the other game, Club Brugge and Monaco 1-1 draw. That was Thierry Henry's first game in the Champions League in charge of Monaco. In Group B, Spurs' group, 2-2, as we've heard, against PSV. Barcelona winning the other game 2-0 against Inter. Group C, Liverpool beating Red Star 4-0 in a fairly comfortable result for them. 2-2 between PSG and Napoli. And then in Group D, Galatasaray and Schalke played out a 0-0 draw. And Lokomotiv Moscow lost 3-1 at home to Porto. Moving on to the championship fixtures that took place this week then as well. We'll start off with your boys, Preston North End. A quite thrilling 4-3 victory, I think it's fair to say, at home to Brentford. But I'm sure, as well as being thrilling, it was a nail-biting one for you guys as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a bit of a nervy conclusion. I don't think we ever quite thought that we were going to win, especially at 3-0 up going to 3-2, and then obviously Robinson getting the goals 4-2, and then the nervy conclusion when Morpay scored and made it 4-3. But I think it's another sort of stepping stone, another encouraging performance for North End. I think going forward they were really impressive defensively. Obviously some issues there, a lack of a sort of settled back four at the moment. I think Neil's chopped and changed a lot over the last few weeks. Obviously Paul Huntington, the latest to come back into the team last night, and Neil said himself that the settled back four is the key to sort of rising up the table, and I think you have to agree with that. And I'm certainly surprised that Jordan Story was dropped, because I thought he was pretty good against Wigan. From what I hear, he was solid against Hull. Was a little bit unlucky with the penalty, which I must admit, watching back, didn't look like a penalty. But I thought the players that stepped in last night were quite solid. Maybe Fisher, not one of his greatest games, a little bit susceptible for the opening two goals. Hughes looked a lot more solid than he has done. Obviously, looking forward, Robinson, since he's had his international debut, looks like a completely different player. One of the best players in the league, I would argue, at the moment. Barkhusen as well, worked really hard, a little bit lucky with his goal, but I think he deserved it with how he played. And obviously Nemetja, another really strong performance, and he's endearing himself to the North End fans now, and overall a really good result.
It's always an entertaining game when Preston play Brentford. They usually get the better of us. I've not got a great record in recent years against them. And then even at 3-0 after 23 minutes, I was sat thinking, is this too good to be true? And when we went in at half-time 3-1, I knew Brentford had come out flying, and they managed to get that second goal. I think the first goal was a quality goal, which you can't really blame the defence for. But the second and third that Brentford scored leaves you with a few question marks over the defence. That said, though, it's now 4 unbeaten, 2 wins, 2 draws, and starting to put a run together. And we've got Rotherham on Saturday, which on paper you'd think it should be 3 points, but they've surprised people. They got a good point at Middlesbrough, which they'll take a lot of confidence from. But we're in a good way at the moment, and if we can replicate recent performances, I'd back us to come out on top. Like Ryan said, Nemetja's been fantastic since Aston Villa away, and I think the whole fan base just wants him to get that goal because he really deserves it. He's working his socks off. He's linking play up really well. He almost got the goal on Wednesday from the third goal, which hit Barkay's and shin pad. So I think everyone's sort of rooting for him, and hopefully he can get the goal on Saturday, and we can make it 5 unbeaten and start to climb up that table now, because it's still really tight, and a couple of wins could put you up to mid-table, and then you're looking up from there.
Yeah, Ollie, as George says, that's 4 games unbeaten, 19th place on the upward curve now. Really sort of finding that form and pulling away from the relegation zone now.
Yeah, it's what you want. I mean, to gather a bit of momentum, and okay, on Saturday we didn't play the best against Hull, and we scraped an equaliser at the death, but it's that sort of spirit that the squad has shown throughout to score goals. Okay, it concedes goals, but it scores the goals, and these last minute equalisers shows that we're not a team to just sit down after and let a team let the floodgates open after we have gone down, and we won't be put to the sword. I mean, regarding last night, it was fantastic to see us up and have that clinical edge, which we have been lacking. 3 good shots on target and 3 goals in the first 25 minutes. We shocked Brentford really. Brownie, absolutely running wild. He does a fantastic job behind the front 3, playing that number 10 sort of role. A bit unconventional because he's constantly pressing and harassing defenders and midfielders, and it's fantastic to see. And going forward, we looked a much more cohesive unit, Robinson, 7 goals and 15, fantastic return at this stage of the season from a left winger. Nemecha, as the boys have said, working ever so hard, and after speaking to others that have spoken to club staff, they say that Alex Neil has worked wonders with him on the training ground. And, you know, when he first came, he wasn't quite up to the physicality of the Championship, quite evidently. But Neil's certainly putting through his paces in training. And credit to Neil, but credit to Nemecha, because he's put his head down. He's a good lad, and he's showing the benefits of it now. Obviously, with the defence, there's still frailties, but when you're down that end of the table, there will be, as confidence needs to be built up. And like George said, it was never really put to bed. You never really thought, even at 3 goals up, we were going to see the game out. I mean, I was saying to Ryan before the podcast, like I said to my uncle after 2 minutes and 46 seconds, it's a shaky one. You know, we're not going to be winning this easy here, and it showed. And okay, the Bees were buzzing for a bit, but ultimately it's the Lily Whites that come out on top, and it's really good to see. It sets us up well for a tough encounter against Rotherham, tougher than it looks, because I think, like George said, it was a very hard-earned draw against Middlesbrough, who are second in the division and looking to get promoted. But I think if we come out fighting, pressing style of play, this effective style of football that Alex Neil talks about, which has shown to be positive and successful in the last 4 games, I don't see why we can't get 3 points and continue this unbeaten streak.
Quick score predictions then from you three.
Great shout. I'm going to go 2-1 Preston.
2-0.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-0 as well. Hopefully a bit of a calmer game than the home we watched last night.
Lovely and simple for Preston then at the weekend, according to you guys. My team, Ipswich, played as well last night. And moving on to the other Championship fix. No.
Go on, Tom.
2-0 defeat against Leeds. I mean, we didn't really expect anything else. They're doing really well, particularly at home. I think obviously we didn't get blown away, and I think kind of like how far we've maybe dropped in recent times is the fact that everyone, particularly on local radio, listening to it and everything like that, we almost seemed delighted with the fact that we weren't losing 4-0. And you know, and that's fair enough. I think we go to expect to be beaten at a team like Leeds, but the only reason it felt like while we weren't getting absolutely beaten is because Leeds didn't feel the need to get out of second gear. They didn't, you know, have 30, 40 shots, but that's probably because they felt that they could just stroke the ball around, have 75% of the possession, weren't ever really threatened. First 15 minutes, it was a pretty even game, but you can expect that in a lot of games between sides where one is significantly better than the other. We didn't really threaten at any point to put them under any pressure. They were always in complete control of the game. And I don't really see us turning around now. I think most teams that we play against, the fans are often saying, you know, are not, you know, they're not gloating in victory on social media, for example. They're saying things like, I feel genuinely sorry that we have, and you know, and you know when it's gone for football fans, when it's gone beyond goading other fans, then you know it's pretty bad.
It's a sorry situation, but like for you, how long is it before Paul Hurst has to face the music?
There's a lot of things that are wrong. I think the problem. Hurst hasn't helped himself. I think there's been times where he's made slightly odd tactical decisions. I think he's quite a lot of times he's thrown his cards up in the air and hoped that they land right, because he hasn't found a winning formula, and instead of trying to stick at something that's worked, he's tried a lot of different systems. He's particularly with the back four, he's played, you know, right backs at left back and centre backs and right back, and Matthew Pennington's played at right back, and Jan Ojanassin is who's a right-footed right back by trade, coming from Accrington, playing at left back at times. Yesterday he made 7 changes.
7? Crikey.
He made 7 changes, and that wasn't really. I mean, you could say that maybe some of those are down to playing at the weekend and then today, but with such a poor performance at home to QPR, you can understand why there were some. Yeah. But it just seems that he throws cards in the air and struggles. I think his track record shows he's a good manager. I don't think that he suddenly turned a bad manager overnight. I think he might. I'm starting to agree with some supporters who are suggesting he might be a bit out of his depth.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think he's a bit of a fool guy, as managers will continue to be under the ownership of Marcus Evans. We invested more money in terms of transfers this year, but the majority of that was from funds that we got in from the sale of likes of Waghorn, and of course McGoldrick went to Sheffield United, and Garner's gone as well for a fee, and Adam Webster as well went to Bristol City, and we haven't replaced that experience and in Waghorn's case, especially goal scoring power. We haven't. We've looked at League One and League Two players. Yes, you can expect maybe to bring in 2 or 3 and then make the step up and be good. But we've signed up to near about 10 and tried to put them in a team and get it to work, and it just hasn't. So I think Evans has to take responsibility, as he has, but doesn't, but has to over as the same as the last few years, because we, if for example he'd invested, I don't know, 4 million in the squad, even 3 million on top of keeping the likes of Waghorn, then we'd be in a much better situation than we are at the moment. We've got him in for 5 million, and the outlay is probably slightly over that, but we've ended up with a much worse net result. As long as we're competing with the budget we have, we're steadily not going to be competing. That's the way that a lot of fans are seeing it. I'm not quite as drastic, but certainly I can see with where they're coming from, in the fact that we've got League One players. That's true. We've got a League One manager. That's maybe I dispute that, because what is a League One manager? But you know what I mean. League One players, League One manager, League One budget, and surprisingly enough, we're the bottom of the table heading towards League One.
Do you think there's a feeling from any Ipswich fans that maybe they should have kept McCarthy? Do you think maybe they wouldn't be in this position if he had stayed, or do you think it was the right decision and Hurst is just sort of the wrong manager at the wrong time?
I think there's a small minority who, whatever Mick McCarthy would have done, they would have backed him, and there are a few who are now coming out in the situation and sticking their Mick should have been here. I don't think that's helpful, because he's not anymore. I personally maintain, I think I'm right in saying that this is probably the majority of Ipswich fans' views, that it was the right decision to get rid of McCarthy, not necessarily because of the position in the league table, but because of the toxic atmosphere that there was between him and the fans. And whether you blame the fans for that a bit, obviously most town fans would probably say that was McCarthy's fault for sort of starting that off often, but he would blame the fans. But whatever the reasons for it, I think the mature and the right approach was to say, well, we've had some good years. Well, certainly the first few years under McCarthy, it was going downhill anyway. I mean, people forget that we only won like 2 in 20 or something like that. So it wasn't like everything was hunky-dory under Mick. It's just we weren't in the drastic situation we are now. And there were other issues that were off the field, and I think it was the right time for him to go. Unfortunately, whether it be due to the choice of manager or the transfer policy since, we have gone, in terms of league position anyway, definitely backwards. And I think the majority of fans, Ipswich fans, would probably say that it was the right decision to get rid of Mick, but we just didn't make the right decision in who to replace him with.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And back to your earlier question, I think that's probably why that most feel that that he might be on his way soon. There are even some saying it should have gone after the Leeds game, but really? I don't think that was, given the calibre of opposition, that probably wasn't the right game. If we don't get anything away at Millwall, who are 20th at the moment, then I think there might be some serious rumours flying about that he might not be around for much longer.
I do remember we did speak about this briefly a few weeks ago, but if at this current stage, if you were to say sack Paul Hurst at the end of the month, say by the time our game comes around away at Portman Road, who is to either bring in, or is there anyone to promote from within that you can see?
When Mick McCarthy left at the end of last season, Brian Clew, who's involved with the youth team there, and a promising up-and-coming coach who's now been promoted to first-team coach, Chris Hogg, and the under-23 coach, Gerard Nash, were all involved. But problem is that Brian Clew doesn't want the job.
No.
He's just involved with the youth, so that was very much a temporary thing. I think we'd have to look elsewhere to get someone in, but I don't see who it's an appealing job for. People are saying things like Steve Bruce, which would be a good shout. He's out of work, but why would he's going to have no budget here? He's probably quite a highly paid manager at Aston Villa recently and at previous jobs. I don't really see it. And then Mark Warburton's another one that's been thrown about.
Do you think Simon Grayson possibly one that could?
Possibly. And knowing Evans, that's sort of the sort of manager we might end up with. But I don't.
He's got a good track record.
But the thing is that that's very, from an Ipswich Town fans' perspective, I'm sure that the majority would see that as quite an uninspired appointment, and certainly not one that. I mean, yes, it might be a short-term fix, but the irony, of course, being that we are in this exact position where Mick McCarthy took over. Maybe that is an argument that he should still be here, but I think, I think times had moved on. I think that. That if he'd stayed here, that the relationship wasn't going to improve, and I think it would have only just got steadily worse anyway. And who knows? I mean, if Waghorn had gone anyway, maybe we'd still be in this position with McCarthy. We never know. But it's a worrying situation, and I know it's October, and I know we're only 14 games in, but just the way we're playing and being outplayed by so many teams, I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that we probably are going to be relegated already. I don't see it being like Preston, where you guys saw something that could click, and suddenly you would have a 4-game unbeaten run and you're out of the relegation zone, and you're on an upward curve. I don't see that in any, and maybe there was a bit in that Swansea game where we won 3-2, which is increasing like a fluke. But then to have the result at home to QPR in such a, I mean, QPR they're all right, but they're not great. Particularly the start of the season they've been better recently, but they just they knocked it around like it was a training game, scored when they felt like it, and we never looked like really having a shot or getting back into it. And that's not against a Middlesbrough or a Leeds in that case. That was against QPR. So. You do fear for something drastic is going to have to happen, and I can't really see where it's coming from.
Yeah, that's quite discouraging. I mean, for Ipswich fans, but I guess with that in mind, do you have much hope for Millwall on Saturday?
Well,
I mean, it's a
not
bottom
now
of the
that
table
they've picked up. Yeah, they've picked up as well. They got a good win against Wigan, didn't they?
Yeah.
So. I don't really. And Millwall is not. You don't want to go to the New Den when it's when it's when
you're in that
atmosphere and you're in, and we're playing with so much lack of confidence. I think an atmosphere like that will only make that worse. So again, I don't think we'll be blown away, but we'll be comfortably beaten. That's I can't really see much else at the moment. So probably again a similar sort of 2-0 victory for them. It does already feel like we're just sort of sleepwalking into the time when Hurst just then go, which is and I've got nothing against Hurst. He seems like a thoroughly nice bloke, and he's tried to do stuff. He's tried to come in and make it better and build a relationship with the fans, but it's very difficult to do that, however nice you are, if you're not getting any results on the pitch, really. And I think people are sad that it's not worked out. They're not as angry as they were towards Mick, because the character that they're dealing with isn't quite as defiant and stubborn. But it's not heading the right direction at the moment, and most of the anger is directed at the owner. Perhaps some unfairly, but a lot of it is probably fair. And it's mainly down into a game that's basically run by money now. I think a lack of investment or a lack of additional investment on top of a good solid squad that we already had is maybe the main reason for that. But we must move on then and talk about things on an international level. England, they're up to 5th in the world rankings, which is their highest in 5 years. Now, I don't want to dwell on this too much because we know that the world rankings fluctuate like anything, and they don't really mean an awful lot with some of the teams you end up seeing in high-end positions. But maybe a small indication that England are perhaps on the up, along with a few of the results, and hopefully something to build on anyway.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, I don't take much notice of the
No,
world
nor do I.
rankings.
I'm probably making more of a meal out of it than
No,
these
I
things.
mean, I guess it's different with every fan, but to be fair, I mean, it's nice to see us within the top 10 and, not below, I don't know, just random teams like Switzerland and, at one point, I think Wales were ahead of us, it's nice to see we're in top 5, but like I said, I don't really hold it into much of a high regard. I just hope we can press on and we keep moving forward. New players keep coming in and out the squad, and the players that return like Dele Alli and Lingard, they'll probably come back, but hopefully they'll have a renewed vigour. Having seen players like Sancho and who was the other one? Mason Mount, but taking the place. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, hip hip hooray, isn't it, really? You know what I mean?
He summed it up perfectly. I'm going to move on from that, off the back of that. And next thing up, FIFA have unveiled new plans for a new and expanded Club World Cup. Now, obviously, that's the tournament held every year at the moment, including the Champions League winners from all the different continents, and usually takes place in December sometime. But they're now trying to expand it and get a lot more of the world's biggest teams involved. They had originally, there'd been some time back, there'd been a proposal for that to happen every 4 years, which seemed relatively sensible, but FIFA, in doing their usual FIFA thing, have managed to come up with something less sensible that we should all go along with, because the BBC have been reporting that they have now seen that there are 2 options for an annual tournament. Now, how is this going to fit in with everything else that we seem to have on the calendar? Or they want all these big teams, particularly, I imagine, a lot of ones from Europe being involved.
Well, I
just can't imagine how it's going to work.
Yeah, I must admit, it doesn't really make much sense to me. It seems like a bit of a glorified sort of pre-season cup, I think, with the way they did it this season. Obviously, with the 20 teams in pre-season, all from across Europe and around the world, it just seems too similar to that. And I must admit, I don't really see what's wrong with the current format, because yes, it doesn't get a whole lot of publicity, but it's called the Club World Cup for a reason. You have to win a domestic cup, obviously Champions League, Asian Champions League, Europa League, African Champions League, and a few others. And I think it should only be a few teams in it, not 20, because I think if you've won a domestic cup, that sort of gives you the right to be there. And if you finish 3rd or 4th, I don't think you really deserve to qualify for it.
Yeah, and surely this is going to really impact on we've talked about a bit of, there's been news recently about there going to be a winter break in the Premier League, and well, surely, if we're talking about players needing more of a rest and breaks needing to be okay, surely implementing more competitions, particularly if they're going to be annually like this, just really going to hinder that and really contradict. And there's a contradiction of what FIFA and what the clubs and what the individual nations want. There seems to be no sort of cohesive working together. Mainly, I think that's FIFA not understanding what most people think about something, I imagine.
Yeah, well, you know what FIFA's like. It's irrational at the best of times. But, I mean, I totally agree. It just causes more unnecessary congestion. And I don't think the competition has much value to it as it is. And trying to increase that value, I think they're trying to save a dying dog, really. So I think it's one of those where, to me, eventually it'll end up getting scrapped and we'll move on.
Yeah. Let's move on then to do our predictions for this week. Of course, Premier League predictions. So, first game up then is Brighton versus Wolves.
I see this as a bit of a tight affair. Brighton scraping away at Newcastle. Wolves fall into defeat at home to Watford. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 this week.
Yep, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's something similar. I think Brighton, confidence boosting win last weekend. Obviously, Wolves in good form as well. I'll go with a 1-1 also.
George?
I think it'll be close. Not that there'll be many goals. I think Wolves might respond. I think I'm going to back them to win this 1-0.
1-0 Wolves. I've also gone 1-1. What's next up? Fulham, Bournemouth.
Well, after falling to defeat away at Cardiff last week, I think they'll come out fighting. They did score 2 goals, didn't they? Was it 2 goals?
Yeah, 4-2, yeah.
And, they still were able to score goals. They just conceded more, which was quite horrific against Cardiff. At the Cottage, I think they'll come out fighting, but I don't think Bournemouth will give them an easy ride. So I'm going for another draw, but I'm going for a 2-2 draw.
Yeah.
Have you been reading mine?
No.
Yeah, Ryan?
There's been plenty of rumours, aren't there, about Djukanovic's future at Fulham. I'm not sure he's going to last too much longer, to be honest. And I think Bournemouth will pile the misery on, and it'll be 3-0 to Bournemouth.
Wow.
Ooh.
George?
Do back Fulham start to sort of turn it around. I think this might be the week. I think they've not reined it in. They're still playing how they were in the Championship, and they were better than most teams whereas in the Premier League they aren't. So I think they just need to just to change it up a bit and maybe not go at teams as much. But I do think they might get a result here. I think they'll win 2-1.
Okay, 2-1. As I've already alluded to, I've gone 2-2 like Ollie has. Liverpool Cardiff next.
Resounding 4-1 win for Liverpool. I think, don't get me wrong, Cardiff will take confidence from the first victory of the season, but and they show they can actually score goals, but that was at home. You go into Anfield, and again they will be lucky to score a goal, but I am going to say they'll get a set piece. So yeah, 4-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, I think it's a case of how many Liverpool are going to score, and I'm going to go with 4 and Cardiff score 0, so 4-0.
Yeah, good result for Cardiff. Liverpool might be tired from the midweek game. I don't think that'll affect it at all. I don't think Cardiff will have come up against anything apart from City like Liverpool. I actually think it might be a whitewash, 5-0.
Oh.
I've gone 3-0, so at least I've gone different to Ollie that time. Southampton Newcastle.
Well, I don't know. Newcastle just looks blooming hopeless. And Southampton, good draw against Bournemouth. I didn't expect them to get a draw. I knew it was a derby, but I thought Bournemouth, with the way they play at home, was going to be a convincing win for them. So they surprised me there. So I'm giving him a bit more credit now. Credible 2-0 win for Southampton.
Yeah, I think with Newcastle we could talk all day about Mike Ashley and him being the reason behind Newcastle's problems, but at the end of the day the results haven't been good enough, and I can't really see them getting anything here. I'm going to go with Southampton 2-0.
Yeah, I think it'll probably put my house on it being bottom of the match of the day running order. I don't think it'll be a good game at all. Neither side excites me. I don't think it'll be a good game, but no, Newcastle, I'm sure they'll take a sold out allocation. I think they might just come away with something, so I'll go for 1-1.
That'll ensue the incoming 6-5 now. But I've gone 1-0 Southampton. Not again, probably not a great game, but the way it's going for Newcastle at the moment, you kind of feel that they'd probably come on the wrong end of that. Watford Huddersfield.
Watford at home, great 2-0 win last weekend against Wolves. I can't see anything other than a Watford win, probably 3-0.
Yeah, I can't see past Watford. They've really impressed me this season, apart from that blip against Bournemouth a few weeks back. Going to go with 3-0 to Watford.
Yeah, I don't think Huddersfield played as bad against Liverpool as people expected. Watford a great result. I think they'll back it up at home. Huddersfield might nick a goal, but don't think they'll get anything from the game. So 3-1 Watford, my prediction.
Yeah, I've gone fairly comfortable for Watford 2-0. Leicester West Ham is the 5:30 on Saturday.
With a raucous atmosphere at the King Power, and West Ham desperately unlucky not to get a result against Spurs. I can see it being a tight game, quite an entertaining end-to-end game, but I can't pick a winner out of it, so I'm going to go for 1-1.
Yeah, I think West Ham have improved a lot in the last few weeks, but I think the Yarmolenko injury will set them back a bit. I know Andy Carroll's returning soon, but I don't quite think they'll have enough. I'm going to go with Leicester to win 2-1.
Yeah, I think there'll be goals in it. Both sides have the ability to score goals, and I don't think they've got a great ability to keep them out at the other end. So I think it'll be quite a close one. But as Ryan said, Leicester at home are usually quite a good outfit. So I think they'll win this one. But 3-2 maybe. So yeah, 3-2.
I've agreed with Ryan. I've gone 2-1 to Leicester. On to Sunday's games. Burnley-Chelsea.
Chelsea to win it. Burnley, I think, I don't know, just lacking something, to be really honest. I think they rely on Goodmanson a lot and just balls into the big boys at top. But I don't know, I can't see past Chelsea winning. Probably 3-1, I'll say 3-1, yeah, to Chelsea.
Yeah, I think last season Burnley built a lot of the good form on the home record, and I can actually see them getting a result here. I'm going to go with quite a tight game and 1-1.
Ooh.
As Ryan said last season, I'd probably back Burnley to maybe cause an upset here, but no, I've really been really impressed with Chelsea. I think they'll go and win this comfortably, so I'll go for 2-0.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with George for that one. 2-0 I've got. Crystal Palace Arsenal.
Palace, just another team, aren't they? Like, I'd have to say probably Arsenal win again, away win, but I think it'll be tighter than people expect. Probably 2-1 win to Arsenal.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 11 wins in a row for Arsenal. 2-0 win.
Got a long trip, I guess, tonight to Lisbon. Palace at home, Derby. I know we said all London games are usually cost us a derby. I think Palace might get some. I thought they played well against Everton. Arsenal, I don't think it'll go on forever, even though I have been really impressed with them. So I'll back Palace to come away with something. 1-1.
I've gone a bit of an opposite to that and gone Arsenal to cruise to a 3-0 victory. Man United Everton.
I'm backing United to get the 3 points here, despite my dislike for him. I know they were terrible and really pedestrian against Juventus, but I think Everton have been impressive, but I think they left it late against Crystal Palace, and I don't think Palace played too bad, like George said. But I think United, I think Pogba will dictate the midfield for this game, and hopefully maybe a Rashford or Lukaku goal would be a nice bit of a cameo. So I'll say 2-0 to Man United.
Yeah, I'm backing United to bounce back from Tuesday night, but Everton, they always seem to turn up at Old Trafford and put in a decent performance, so I'm going to go with 1 each.
Yeah, I'll go 2-1 United. Now everyone's slating Lukaku this week, so he'll probably turn up and score against his old team. Everton, just relatively decent side. I don't think they'll have enough though.
Yeah, I've also got 2-1 to United. I think they'll edge it. It'll be a close game, but they'll just about come out on top. Home advantage doing them good, I guess. And finally, for this week, Monday night's game between Spurs and Man City.
Going for quite a bold prediction, 4-1 to City. I just think Spurs will come undone here, and they've got away with a few results in the past. Not been the best, not been good at all in the Champions League. And City really are a complete side with fabulous strength in depth. De Bruyne back now, and I think he'll dictate the game. He'll play fantastically, and a great win for City.
Yeah, in Guardiola's first season, it was Tottenham that ended the unbeaten run with a 3-0 win, I think it was. But I don't think they got the quality this time round, and City have been a really impressive outfit this season. So we're going to go with City to win 3-1.
Yeah, I back City in pretty much every game they play. unless apart from maybe when they come up against Liverpool, you always seem to get the better of them. I think they'll win this game. I think they made a few changes midweek and they can afford to do that because the squad's that good. Whereas Tottenham's squad maybe doesn't have that depth, so they're heavily reliant on certain individuals. I think City will win this game. I think it'll be 2-0. 2-0.
And to finish for this week, I've gone 3-1 to Man City, like Ryan. And that does bring us to the end of this week's podcast. Thanks very much for listening. We'll join you again next week to talk all about the things all about in the footballing world. But until then, we'll see you later. So thanks very much for listening. Bye.
Bye.